opportunity to start, grow, build, and empower young people with a business idea between the ages of 18 to 35. YouthBiz, an initiative of the Ministry of Youth Development created to give you that break you've always been looking for. An agriculture venture, craft, arts, printing, ICT, confectionery, just to name a few. We will guide you, train you, and support you financially to turn that dream into reality. You can receive from $1,000 to $25,000 to start that dream business today. Call us on telephone number 440-6917 or 435-0119. Email us on youthbizgd@gmail.com. YouthBiz, transforming lives through entrepreneurship.
Decide now to come together and to get a small loan so at least all of us could start with future off.
Handing over of the boats to some young fishermen is not just symbolic, but it has significant socioeconomic impact for the individuals who are receiving the boats, but also for the community. St. Mark is developing as a significant contributor in the fishing industry. And so I'm very happy today that there are 5 young fishermen who have been awarded this soft loan, and they have embraced it and they're ready to go out. I'm happy to see that. It makes a lot of difference in their individual lives, in the lives of their family, and also for our community. And the impact on our country is significant as well.
And I decide now I wanted to go on my own because we have family to take care of, house to build, and other things to do.
To live here every day, mostly every day, and go in Grenville. And I take 3 buses, sometimes you take a little more. Every day you have to do this, but we're thankful, we're grateful for it.
There's a little process that sometimes people find is a bit tedious, but in a loan, there are certain requirements that have to be fulfilled. And once you meet those requirements, then you get the loan.
Yeah, well, I will tell them work hard and see how they will get you with the same loan to start off, like how we get it to start off.
And recently, I think over 20 young men from this very parish were trained in captaincy of a boat and so on. So all of these are coming nicely together, and the Ministry of Fisheries would have played their role as well in terms of encouraging young people to get into this industry. It's a great industry. We're grateful to those who have gone before, and we are really blessed to see young men coming in now and taking on that.
The Small Business Development Fund, supporting small businesses.
You're listening to Hard Talk Grenada via www.hardtalkgrenada.com.
Good morning, Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique. You're listening to Hard Talk Grenada. A very special good morning to those of you joining us on the various radio stations: 97.5 CitysoundFM, 89.5 CRFM, 91.9 and 91.5 RealFM Radio, and 92.9 Sister Al Radio Broadcasting from Hillsborough, Carriacou, and 94.9 We Noise Radio out there in Brooklyn, New York. A very special good morning to those of you joining us on the live video stream, whether you're on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram. Very special good morning to you. It is a beautiful Thursday morning in the Spice Isle of Grenada. We're always happy to be here with you. And of course, as you know, we're well into the hurricane season. So with us in studio this morning, I have Miss Oslin Crosby. She's here on behalf of NADMA, and we're going to be speaking all things hurricane season and maybe a little more. Good morning, Oslin.
Good morning. Good morning, Ms. Duncan. Good morning to you and to your guests and viewers. Thank you so much for having me here. It is that time again.
Absolutely, it is. And it came up so quickly. I mean,
yes.
I looked at my calendar and it was June already.
Oh, yes. It tells you how quickly the year is moving. Let's
Yes.
hope it just flies through the season and that we go untouched.
I hope so. And as we say that, we have been told that we are expected to have an above average or active.
Another above average season, yes.
Yes. I mean, we had an above average one last year, and
We
it was.
started at above average, and in the middle of the season, the prediction was revised, but we went into hyper mode. So that's why we don't want people to think that it's just another above average season. We started off like this, and then last year, we just went into extreme mode where everything just went so crazy and so quickly.
Right.
We were having 5+ systems out there in the Atlantic at one time, and I know it had a lot of us worried as to what was happening and whether or not we would have gotten touched. We did not, so we are grateful.
Yes.
So we continue to keep our fingers crossed and hope that the same happens this year. But we remain. What we want to do is encourage preparedness.
Absolutely. And as we are speaking preparedness, how has NADMA been preparing? I know you guys have recently gotten a new facility and so on. I'm not sure y'all moved in already.
Not yet. So we have the new structure on the ground, complements the U.S. government, and we say thank you for that. And both in Grenada and on the sister isle in Carriacou. So we have new headquarters on both isles. We have not moved in yet. Now we need to furnish. When we do so, then we go. So we continue our preparedness from our Fort Frederick location up at Richmond Hill and in Carriacou and Bel Air. So we're still at our old location doing what we do best, but we do have a new structure on the ground, which is, it augurs well for the future of disaster management in Grenada. It is a building that was constructed keeping in mind all the hazards that we can be affected by at any point. So it means that we are moving in the right direction with a structure, with a new home. That is where families are built, right? And that is where things become more concrete. They come together. So it is definitely the kind of progress that we encourage, that we look forward to. And now we're looking forward to bigger and better things disaster management here in Grenada.
Absolutely. So how has NADMA been preparing for the hurricane season that we are in right now? And of course, knowing that we have a double disaster, as you'd call it, because we are still in very much in a pandemic, and now having to prepare for an above average hurricane season. How has NADMA been preparing, and what changes are we to look forward to in terms of incorporating plans and protocols for this pandemic into the already existing protocols for the hurricane season?
So we are existing in a multi-hazardous environment. We have the pandemic, which is health, and then we still have the hurricane season, which we have no control over. And that is in addition to the early onset, the hazards that will not give us any notice that they'll be coming and it can just happen. So multi-hazardous, once we're talking multiple, then we know that the challenges increase. How you respond, what you do, when you do it, and how best. It's always best if, I think the ideal situation is that we can do one thing at a time. Is that realistic? No, it's not. It all happens as mothers. We know that multitasking is the way we live. And that is the reality of everything. So now that is the conditions under which we exist, multi-hazardous. So with the pandemic and the hurricane season, it meant that we had to revise some of our plans. The part that's mostly affected, really the hurricane plan and the pandemic, is that of our shelters. Sheltering is our biggest challenge there, because now we know that the protocol, because we have to enforce the protocols at the shelters, because shelters, because of its construct and its whole purpose, we know that if not managed properly, it can become quite a breeding ground for the transmission of the virus. So we must be very careful. So the same way we are asking our businesses and so to ensure that the protocols are enforced. When you're entering the business, you wear your mask, you have to sanitize, all the things that you need to do. You record. So if you have to do contact tracing and so, all these activities that form part of the protocol have to be enforced at the shelters. Even more so, we now had to institute an isolation or sick bay at our shelters. Because we are not, it's not as if the shelters would tell you only people who are vaccinated can come in. We cannot say that. We will not say that. We will not say something like that, because in times of trouble, we have to be able to house each and everyone in need of that service. So at the shelters, we expect everyone to come in, yes? What we can do, though, is prepare to ensure that the people who don't exhibit symptoms and do exhibit, that we can be able to house them and house them safely. So it means that with the sick bay, the people exhibiting symptoms, you would be in that isolation area. It would also mean that testing would have to happen. In addition to that, we must have the sanitization area where we have to sanitize people, ensure we know who's at the shelters. And you still have to protect your team. You would have the shelter managers, the people working in there to ensure everybody's comfortable. But more so critical is that of shelterees preparing to come into the shelter, knowing the existing situation under which we live. So what should you do? How do you come to the shelters? Do you just, we said that we're under a warning, so we activate shelters and you just leave your home and you just come? No. And that's why we say preparedness is key. So it is important that you have a bag, a backpack. So just in case you have to move at short notice, it's something that you can just pick up and run. And every member of the family would have one assigned to them with the things that they need, the basic necessities, to ensure that their time at the shelters can be comfortable enough. And of course, we can do what we have to do on our end, because after a while, we know that we will have to take care of you. At the shelters, you would have the people who would be there cooking. You would have the people who would be there to ensure that it's clean. Everybody knows their role. What we have to ensure, though, is that a person's comfort is a personal decision. So you need to prepare before you come into the shelter. So that is to ensure that your time away from home, at that time, which will be your haven, is best spent most comfortable as possible. Comfort, yes, is best at your home, but we know in that time, being safe and knowing that at least I have a roof over my head that I can depend on, at this stage will be at the top of your mind. But in addition to that, ensure that you come into the shelter that you are comfortable as you possibly can be.
Okay. And what are some of the necessities do you think people need to start accumulating in the event that we have to, or some persons have to move into a shelter? Now, we never know for sure if we're going to end up in a shelter or not. In some cases, there are people in areas that, definitely I have to move from where I am into a shelter. But there are also people who think that they're safe in their own home, and during the time of the hurricane or tropical depression or storm or whatever it is, they may encounter some difficulties that may require them to quickly move into a shelter. What are the basic necessities that one needs to cater for in these times?
All right, so to start off, we're going to start off with the biggest risk in that situation that you just presented. We don't want you to make that assessment on the last, because you may want to do so when the winds start blowing, and that would not be the best time to do so. So we need you to do your assessment now. Ask yourself the question, what it is that I would have accumulated over time, and we're talking tangible here. Cherished people in our lives that we want to ensure that are safe, that we would not want to lose in a situation like that. Once we do that assessment, it gives us an idea, and then do an assessment of your home. So your physical structure. You will not be able to carry the house with you to the shelter, but there are things you can do to ensure that even if the hazard that we have no control over were to affect your home, that you know that you have somebody, or an institution rather, to look to ensure that you can recover and recover quickly. Nobody wants the headache of having to try to figure out how I am going to put back the roof on the house Money is an issue now. The economy is not at its best because of the pandemic and everything else and all the challenges that we currently live in. So we need to ensure that we prepare for these the situation in which we live in now, right? With that said, as somebody preparing to go into the shelter or just the hurricane season, there's some items that we ask you to put into your hurricane kit.
Right.
It can be in your backpack, just some little things. So non-perishable food, enough to last you at least 3 days. You can put these things maybe in a container, something easy that you can just pick up and move.
Right.
Water, enough water, again, to last you 3 days. Your first aid kit, ensure that you include prescription medications that you may need. And we have to remember our vulnerable groups when we speak to this, our children, our elderly, and also the thought that an important part, our pets. Pets are not allowed at the shelter, so you need to ensure that you prepare for them because they form part of your family. So you have to ensure that you plan for them. Personal hygiene items and sanitization items, you need to ensure that you have those. Your flashlights with extra batteries and bulbs on hand. Your batteries, operated radio. It's important that you know what's happening. When the winds start blowing and maybe the electricity gone down, you need to have a battery-powered radio where you know you can connect to a station that would give you the information that you need so you know what's happening. The worst thing that is to be inside wind blowing and you don't know what's going on. You would be, it would throw you into that state of panic. Information. One of the things that it does is ensure that people are calm. It helps you to calm down because you have a better understanding as to what's happening around you or outside with you not being able to go outside. Clothing and bedding, we spoke about that comfort. You walking with those things, I think we prefer if we can use our linen and so from home, even though we are at a shelter. And tools and emergency supplies and special items. So tools, you may just need, if you have to, when you get out of the shelter, maybe something around the area, there's something blocking your path as you want to leave the shelter. And so a cutlass is usually one of the things the tools that we would use to clear paths and so. That kind of thing, emergency supplies, make sure we have those under special items. For the people who are diabetic, the people who have hypertension, around this time, everything goes up because stress levels peak. Little painkillers. The children, somebody might just get a little bruise, so you need little band-aids. And so you ensure that you are prepared to go into the shelters. If we are not, then it may make the stay there not as comfortable as you like it to be. Keep the items that you would most likely need during an evacuation in an easy-to-carry container. Possible containers including a large covered trash container or camping bag, backpack or duffel bag. So it's easy. So when you say it's a warning and you know you might just be living a little distance away from the shelter. So it's not close to your home, but you need to get to it. And it's important that you know where the shelters are. Though we have not released the shelters list for this year as yet, as we always say, it means that your 2020 list that was approved continues to be the active list until we say that this is the list for this year. So shelters are available. What we wanted to do is ensure that you are safe, that you are prepared rather to go into the shelters. And it is even more so important that we start the conversation now with our children, especially our children and elderly, because we will be displacing them. Displacement is never an easy adjustment to make, but if we start the conversation now, then in their minds they would start thinking of that. Even though we're not saying that a system is coming, what is important is that we prepare. And that is what we encourage them when we say to start with the conversation. Put them sit down. We are in the hurricane season. We live in the tropics. The chances now are higher that we can be affected by a cyclone. What are some of the conditions that we expect? Wind, rain, lightning, thunder. We should also have an idea now as to some of the things that they are afraid of. Most children are afraid of thunder. So we start to prep them, and we know during a cyclone, there are a lot of thunder. Thunder roll nonstop, and they constantly here might traumatize them. So let us start preparing them now. Speak to them about it. We may have to move to a shelter if we think that the system is coming is not strong enough, and we need to ensure that you are safe. But for your safety, we will have to go to that school. We will be going, it may just be their school. We'll be going to your school. We will have to have our our stuff to sleep in, our things close to wear, things to ensure that your snacks and so the little things that you would need to ensure that you eat, you have water, the things that you will need. And you'd be amazed as to how involved they would want to be in the process when you simplify it and you share it with them. The same thing for our elderly. Our foundation members don't like leaving their homes, but it may just be a case where they have to go.
Yeah.
So we need to have the conversation with them. This is what, if the cognitives are still working, then it's going to be easier. But we know that if the issues of dementia is one of the conditions of concern, then it will be a little harder. But we need to also have a plan in place to ensure that we can take them to safety long before the hazard has started to affect us. And we want to really put a lot of emphasis on our vulnerable groups. Also, let us not forget our people living with disability, those who may be mobile. How do we get them to the shelters? We need to know who our vulnerables are. It forms part of that critical plan to ensure we get them to safety before.
And that was one of the questions in my mind. How does NADMA know who? Because I know people in different communities can identify with who in their area is vulnerable or disabled or so on, and may need some form of assistance, who may be a shut-in or so on. How does NADMA get to that place where they find out who needs assistance? Because sometimes in the midst of these situations, you get so caught up in dealing with your family and your surroundings that it may slip your mind that, oh my goodness, this my neighbor is not so well, or my neighbor needed some assistance, and oh shoot, I forgot. But how does NADMA ahead of time figure out that there are, let's say in the area of Mount Morris, there are 40 shut-ins, and these are their locations, and this is their living situation, and they may or may not need to be evacuated? How do we come up with that kind of data?
That is where our district committees come in. So that's the people who will be combing the communities.
Right.
And what we have is a vulnerability plan. I know for sure Carriacou would have already conducted theirs last year, where they have been able to identify all the vulnerables in the different communities, and knowing who will need to be moved to a shelter, the closest shelter to them, and how you plan to take care of them, how you plan to get them there, and how you plan to take care of them. And it is a plan that Carriacou would have activated, or rather conducted in conjunction with the family. So it is how we know. And the same thing applies here in Grenada. We have an idea as to where our vulnerables are, and then we know it. So it is similar to that of when we do our Tsunami Ready. Remember we do Caribbean WeiVybz every year?
Yeah.
We focus heavily on our vulnerable groups, because if you're living in the hazard zone, for example, in St. Patrick, I remember when we did St. Patrick a couple of years ago, we focused heavily on our vulnerable groups, because we have daycare centers that's in the hazard zone. We have elderly, we have geriatric homes in that hazard zone. We have our vendors, our fisher folks, the people who, and some of the people that we know will not be able to move on their own to get to safety. So it is some of the things that we will do. It's a vulnerability assessment where we identify the people who will need that assistance. And we know for sure that when we start evacuation, so when we issue the order that it's warning, we're under warning, shelters are activated, that these are the people that we need to get out of their homes and get them to the shelter long before. And that's the reason why we always have that very important conversation, that it is important that you do the assessment before. See, when we spoke a while ago about in the midst of trying to ensure that your family is secure, that we forget about the neighbor. If we have a plan, then we would not forget the neighbor, because the plan will be for our family. And in that plan, even other family members would think about, okay, so remember, a part of the plan is also to figure out where would be your backup, yes? So you may not choose to go to a shelter, but you might have a neighbor that may have a home that is considered, after doing an assessment, you realize that is a lot more sturdy than yours. So that is going to be your backup plan. So what do? Do we just wait until the wind start blowing and the roof come off, and then you're trying to run now in the middle of all that's happening to be now in even greater risk because the missiles and so going about, you can be killed. It means that with that plan, you would go over to the neighbor long before. Duncan, I don't think my home will be able to take me through a system now that we're into the hurricane season. I know yours look a lot stronger. Your home is younger. So we will be using you as our backup. We have you in our backup plan,
Right.
in our plan as our backup home that we will be coming to in the event of a system.
Right.
With that said, it means, therefore, that the neighbor will be preparing for you.
Right.
So in the neighbor's plan, they will be able to put it because they know we now know that we will have guests.
Yeah.
And even though you're going over to the neighbor, you would also walk with some of the things that would make you most comfortable. So you see how sheltering is extended not just to official emergency shelters, but also to that of your community, that community brotherly
Yes.
way of living that we do here in Grenada and how it extends to them.
Yes.
So yes, once we plan in advance, we will have an idea. We can identify where we will be going. We can alert the person that will be coming. So the person's plan. And not only that, your neighbor may not have a plan, but when you come, just with that proposal, it would ignite a thought.
Right.
And they would start working on theirs. And then now they would go to another family member. Do you have a plan? If this were to happen, where will you be going? Do you think your home is ready for this?
Yeah.
So with that chain, the chain reaction is critical in the disaster management process. So you may think that this is just me. No, it's not just you. No, it's not just you. And this time around, as shared in Senator's national address when the season begun, is that of trying to pull together that relationship that COVID would have pushed in us, where it woke up that part of us again. And it is always in times of disaster that those opportunities, those reminders come about. That it's important that we be our brother's keeper. And we see the chain reaction in all that's happening, all that can happen, and how one person's action can affect ripple effect positive actions in others. And that is what disaster management is all about. We often see the downside to it, but there are many positive opportunities that can be derived from one unfortunate incident.
Yeah, and it calls for a lot of collaboration. I don't think we often look at it in that way, where I need to find out from my neighbor if my neighbor needs some sort of assistance, or I need to take into consideration that maybe my house needs to now become a safe haven for somebody else, that humanitarian act. Often I don't see us doing that very often. Another question, however, that comes to mind is that of children. We spoke about children. We know that our children are one of the biggest and most effective avenues for carrying messages around. They go home and they tell their parents, and they may tell friends and so on, and have conversations about it and influence change in some way. The most of the hurricane season for the students, or at least 2 months of that hurricane season, is spent at home because we have the summer vacation coming up and so on. The hurricane season seems to always, it starts abruptly at the end of a semester. So when students are preparing for exams and so on. So there isn't really that opportunity, or it's not thought of, for teachers and so on to really sit and speak about these kinds of disasters and the season that we are in and what we need to do and so on. I don't often see it happening at that time. Has NADMA ever considered maybe doing a week of re-education at the beginning of every hurricane season when it comes down to the end of the school term for students going home? So that they understand what they're supposed to do and what information they're supposed to give to their parents.
So what bridged the gap? That program would have started years ago with the hosting of the primary school quiz.
Right.
And then we also had a secondary school competition. So yes, that was the aim. And it remains. With COVID, we've had to do the hybrid to the primary school quiz, where we're doing it on the radio stations.
Right.
So what it means, though it's a hybrid and we're not getting to target specific schools, we have an opportunity then to reach the whole of Grenada. Because with a question, as a parent, there may be something that you don't remember, and with the question and the answer by the children, then you recognize, I did not see that way. or I did not know that. So our reach now is wider. But it was the thought behind the school quiz at the starting of the hurricane season. And we would also, we used to have also the week of awareness. This year we were doing everything via media because of the protocols that we have to enforce and the limitations given, the limitations that COVID bring.
Right.
But yes, it was keeping that in mind that we do that. That we do it that way. So in the past, what we would have is the quiz would start just about the middle of May, and it would end on the first week of June, which is our week of awareness. So we have had in the past over 40 plus primary schools taking part in the quiz, and the grand finale we would do the Thursday of the first week in the hurricane season. They say we did not get a chance to do it. What we're doing though is have the radio quiz on the different stations where we partnered with the stations to allow us just about 10 minutes in the morning.
Right.
We send you the questions, you share it, a child call in, they win, and we have a prize at the end. We have a prize giving ceremony at the end. But that is what the quiz does, because the teachers then must prepare the students for the quiz. We give them an idea as to the topics that we will be covering, and then prepare them in a wide range of information on the different hazards, and then we quiz them accordingly. So what it does is they do become our messengers, and they are very, very, very good messengers because they touch another part of parents, that emotional side, which is critical in this disaster management process. Unless you can show someone how my actions can affect others, especially the people that we cherish most, it is what prompts behavioral change in people. So yes, we have been using that. We are hoping that by next year, God's will, that we will be back to what we used to be doing, more the in touch and not the indirect form of communicating. We would also do a number of presentations at our schools. It also formed part of that awareness time. So what we're doing now is using the tools to get the message across. So we are in the process now of creating a flyer for all our schools, all our churches. So we're now targeting our mass groups a different way, but with the same intention of getting the message out to people on disaster preparedness and the need to be prepared during this hurricane season. It therefore means, as you highlighted, that as the children now are into the, they will be home for 2 months in the summer break, that parents, so you see where we're going back to that critical element where parents now have to drive the message home, and now it is now showing the need to start the conversation because they will be home, and in some cases they are home with grandparents. They both form the vulnerable groups. How do we plan to take care of that? The good thing is with hurricanes, we have time to prepare, we have time to respond. So what we do when we do it is what will make the difference as to the outcome. And our desired and preferred outcome is that we can be speaking to everyone and we still have you counted among the lives still contributing to the growth and development of this country after we are affected by a hazard and not numbered as a casualty. It is always sad when we lose people. I don't think we have enough people on island here to lose.
Yes.
And if we can prevent it, why not? And that is what we are hoping we can continue to do, ensure that everyone are all safe.
Absolutely. So do you think, as the fact that we're living in a tropical zone, the fact that we are prone to a natural disaster at any time that can range from not just hurricanes, because I think we focus a lot.
Earthquakes.
Yeah, I think we focus a lot on hurricanes because
we have an assigned season,
right?
Yes.
But we don't focus on the fact that there can be a tsunami at any time, or an earthquake at any time, or a volcanic eruption at any time. I still think that most people don't even know that not Kikimjeni, but Mount St. Catherine is still an active volcano. People don't take that into consideration. We don't think about these things, and we don't talk about it. I don't think we talk about it enough. Do you think that that's something that maybe needs to be added to the school curriculum as a subject to be taught on a continuous basis?
I know the Ministry of Education is in the process of doing a school safety policy. It forms part of that. So it is a bigger framework.
Right.
So we're working along with education, of course, being a part of the NADMA structure, with NADMA education being the one responsible primarily for shelters, since most of our shelters are schools. They are the drivers behind that. But in addition to that, we know that the curriculum amendment is something that the ministry is also working on.
Right.
So as that process continues, we will be updated on it. But yes, it is the way to go. It is the way to go, because if we were to make it a part of everything that we do, then it makes it easier to have culture change and also a more responsive nation when it comes to hazards, knowing what the hazards are, knowing how to respond to them correctly. Thereby, it means that we will be minimizing our chances of casualty when they do affect us. Ignorance is
Yep.
Ignorance is the source of
It's our biggest folly.
so many things that can go wrong, but it is not, as we say, it is not immunity to the law, and be it the law of the land or the law of living. It is for us to know. It is for us to know. So we continue to share. We continue to do what we need to do. But we encourage you, if you think you need to know more, go out there and do a research. Find out. Don't let misinformation, because misinformation is what creates panic.
Right.
If you know, knowing can do two things for you. It empowers you, but it also helps you to better plan on how to respond.
Absolutely.
Yes. Ignorance will not do that. All it will do is throw you in panic mode. And that's the reason why we share information disaster management. You know, sometimes you go some places, speak about hazards and how they can affect us. And somebody's going to be like, but why are you guys talking about this? You're trying to call the tsunami? Or No. Information is never about creating panic. It is about empowering you so that you can do the right thing when and or if we are affected, because the intention here is to ensure that we are safe.
Absolutely. If an individual in any community or any part of Grenada is seeking advice on whether they are, I don't want to say in a disaster zone, but where they may be in a vulnerable state. For example, normally you would stay indoors for a hurricane. But you want to just do an assessment of your surroundings to make sure that you take into consideration not just the fact that my roof is secure, but that my surrounding is secure, that the land hasn't slipped from under my pillars, or that the hill behind my house doesn't slide down on top of me, or something like that. Does NADMA provide that kind of service? And if not, whom can they contact to make these kind of determinations?
All right. So the NADMA structure, as we would always speak to, and we know that we have to do a lot more. That's the reason why I continue to share it. NADMA, the National Disaster Management Agency, is a coordinating unit. Our structure involves the Ministry of Works. We also have the Grenada Engineers Association are also a part of this. So when it comes to that kind of assessment, we're talking here professionals.
Right.
Yes? So the Ministry of Works is the one that we would advise that that you would contact in that case.
Right.
So if you think that you're really not safe, or you can simply contact one of these professionals so that they can come in and just do an assessment. You may not be sure, right?
Yeah.
So it's just to look at your home for you. It's like, all right, let me weigh it now. Where am I? I live underneath a rock. Is it sturdy? Is it solid? Will it come down? What are the chances that it will?
Right.
So it goes to that part of data collection before the hazard were to affect you. We know that you're not the expert there, and there may just be some remedial work that you can do before the season. And it is a reason why we always say do that assessment long before the season starts. And that's a good thing. As you keep saying, we focus heavily on the hurricane season, but the reason for that is because there's an assigned period that we consider to be our hurricane season. Yes. The good thing is, you know it's coming. It will not change no matter what pandemic it has. Whatever is happening around the world, the hurricane season will be from June 1st to November 30th.
Right.
So it means, therefore, that preparedness, there is no excuse for us not being prepared.
Right.
So with that said, we're still kind of young into the season. The rain, yes, the rains are falling. but we have not gotten to the stage where I think that the soil is having fun, absorbing most of it, because we're not seeing so much of the flooding as yet.
Yes.
Because we have had some hot days. Right. Still, you have time still to do your assessment. Get somebody in to check it for you. You're not sure, if you think you're not ready, you're not sure to do so. The Ministry of Works, if not, once you contact the Ministry of Works, they will be able to direct you as to whom else may be able to assist if they cannot do it at the time.
Right.
Yes. Explore the options. Don't tend to think that there is nowhere to go and nothing to do. In addition to that, you can actually look around your home, walk around your home, meet with your neighbor. There may be a drain that's separating two properties. You might decide to open yours, and the neighbor did not do theirs, but theirs can be. Theirs can affect the entire community just within that area where you're living, because with theirs blocked and yours unblocked, yes, it's going to flow freely, but what happens on the other side? And we know that whenever the soil becomes saturated, then there will be runoff, surface runoff, and that is what's happening. So let us ensure that we don't think it is all about that collaborative effort here in the preparedness process, and we will continue to share and encourage that this season. You are part of a sports club. Come together, think about it. What can we do to help? The same people who come out to support us every weekend when we have a football game, we have a cricket match, we have a basketball game. How do I ensure that I continue to have that support structure? Because as a player, you hear it all the time. It is not just playing, Playing to people is what makes a difference. And we're seeing it now in this virtual world. We are tired of it. Having to constantly do the Zoom. We want to be able to see people in front of our faces. So as a sports person, as an athlete, you're a part of a team. And there's nobody there to cheer you on when you score a goal and you hear the big roar. I mean, it's like, okay, it's not normal, is it? So think about this. How do I continue to have that support structure there? It means that we need to see how we can ensure that they are safe. So you might just decide to put on a cleanup drive. Look around the community. Let us clean up the river. Let us choose this weekend that we're going to take on a couple drains that we're going to clear, because we realize that there's a backlog there. It will make the community a lot safer. In the churches, do a vulnerability assessment in your congregation. There may be some members there. Some members, yes, may have a full family structure that can take care of them. But we know that there will always be that percentage of people that will not have the same structure as those who that have one. That's most reliable, that are still more reliable. So you sit down and you identify them. We know where they live. Go in. Do an assessment with your team. In your congregation, in the congregation, we have all professions available. And whenever we attack it on that level, we know that the loyalty to be it a church or a group, it is not about money. It is more there about that ensuring that community spirit and you doing your part. Because one of the things that I think we can all appreciate here in Grenada is that we don't ever always see money with everything that we do. Because of the construct in which we live. We grew up as a community. We don't have food. You can call a neighbor. They would feed you. I have this. If I have a lot, I'll share it with you. That is how we live. It is how we have always lived. And it is important that we lean on that foundation principles, the same principles that have us where we are now, because we continue to share it and continue to encourage people to live by it. So in the congregation, we may have an engineer. You may have a technical person that will be able to go there and give you an assessment. So when you do that vulnerability assessment with the congregation, you recognize that Miss Mary is living alone, and she may not have the help that she needs to get her there. So you have on that special list, and then you're going to take one of the same parishioners in the church, one of the congregation members, and we say, this weekend we have a task. We're going to make it a church project where we're going to go out and we're going to do an assessment of Miss Mary's house. There may be something that we maybe do to add some. So to make it more resilient to a system. And if we realize that, okay, even though we do this, if it's a Cat 4 that's coming, then we say, no, it would not be able to withstand that. So we need to go and move her. The church is usually used as a shelter in times of in those times, because depending on the nature and strength of the system, we know that a lot of places that you don't anticipate will be, they form part of your backup plan. And the churches are also an integral part in that of our relief structure on an admin level. So let us do what we can. Every organization play a part. We just spoke about the football club. We spoke about the churches. Let's speak about our businesses. We're talking about livelihoods here. We're talking about investment here. Remember, once a person can associate their livelihood, life, and everything else, because remember, livelihood speaks to your investments, your property, the things that you would have worked hard and invested in, because that is how you can pay your bills every month. That's how you pay your mortgage. That's how you can give your family a safe home, some place to live, put clothes on their back, food on your table. Let us speak to this. Let us drive the message home. Let us start the conversation there. Because as a business owner, you still need to ensure that your business is safe and that after the system has passed, that we can continue to work. Because this engine will need to continue to work. This machinery does not stop because the hurricane passes. We will have the time when we get to assess, but thereafter, life continues. The hard part, I mean, the rough, it starts with the passing of the system. The hard part is recovery. What do we do? And if we don't prepare appropriately, then recovery becomes harder, not just for the country, but as an individual. What do we do? How do we do it? When do we get it done? And it is the worst thing that you would want to go through, because you're already displaced, you're already uncomfortable, and then not knowing where to turn, when, where, and who to turn to. At that time, I mean, that one can send you right home. The system did not kill you, but the stress from that part would certainly play a big part in ensuring that life is not the same for you after that. And that is how
those of us who went through Ivan definitely can relate to that.
And that is how we need to start thinking. That is how we need to start thinking. Let us connect the dots. None of us are an island in this.
No
one. In disaster, as I say, rain never fall on one man's house top. It's going to fall on all of ours, and the wind will blow, and the lightning will strike. It would light up the whole place, and we know that lightning is a new hazard that we have started to pay attention to. And because we are becoming a lot more technologically savvy with all that's happening around us, we know what we are doing. We have a lot more electromagnetic waves and so around us. It is no longer where lightning, you say, okay, so the lightning, we know we're waiting for the thunder. You have to look now at the lightning and the thunder. So the world is changing.
The world is
the hazards list, it's getting longer. What it tells us, we need to be more mindful, we need to be more alert, we need to be more aware as to what's happening around us, and the need for us to prepare, plan ahead. There will be no excuses, because who will we be quarreling with? The system when it passes? That's nature doing what it's supposed to do. What we need to do on our end is ensure that we are prepared.
Exactly. And I love the idea of us coming together as a community, as groups, as a society, to ensure that our surroundings are safe and that we are protecting our lives and livelihood, because we oftentimes say, okay, well, it's the job of the environmental wardens, or it's the job of the debushes to ensure that the drains are clean and that the drains are cleared and so on. But it's also our personal responsibility as well. You know, I was part of a group in St. George Northwest who, well, the pandemic came, so we didn't do for 2020, but for 2019 that went on to ensure that they went to different parts of the constituency, and whether it was overhanging bushels or whatever it was, to try to get these things cleared and clean. And that may become our jobs. As a matter of fact, it is our job. It's our civic duty to ensure that our surroundings are clean and clear. Yes, government does have a massive role to play as well, but so do we, you know. And as soon as we start understanding that we as a people, as Grenadians, have a role to play in the development and success of a lot of initiatives, then the easier it's going to be for a lot of us. Can you imagine if during the hurricane season we see, as you said, sports clubs and community organizations and associations and so on coming together and doing massive cleanup campaigns and ensuring that the vulnerables in their community are well accounted for, and we do risk assessments in our community community, so we know what may happen in the event of what situation. Can you imagine how much easier a lot of us will sleep at night knowing that that has been taken care of?
Yes.
You know, so it really is a personal responsibility. It is a civic duty. It's part of what patriotism is about.
Yes.
You know, and I would love to see for that to happen. So I think NADMA maybe needs to make a clarion call, you know, for these associations and these groups to do their civic duty, you know, to hear from civil society. And some of these things, it doesn't take a lot of money. It takes manpower. That's what it needs, manpower.
Yeah.
You can get the I'm sure there are institutions or businesses that will be willing to donate a couple of shovels and garbage bags and gloves and so on to these kind of initiatives.
And you see, that's the thing. We don't even need to go to the businesses to do that, because most of us will have a shovel at home.
Right.
We'll have because all you need to do a cleanup is the people who may choose to put on the gloves, soap gloves, garbage bags. You may need a shovel, broom. All things that we have at home.
Yeah.
We decide to come together. All you do is you pull people together, and people come out with their resource. We're going to, it's a community project, and there's no mountain that we would not be able to move.
Yes.
It is not an impossible feat at all. All we need to do is start. Somebody just need to start, and once we do this, we accept the responsibility, and then we take action. Yeah. That is what it's about. It is about taking action.
Yes.
And once we do that, we become a much more resilient country.
Absolutely.
Because every community taking that very bold step, call to action, at the end of the day, it is reflective on the country, on how ready we are, not just for the hurricane season, but for everything. Those little drills, we speak about them all the time, the little exercises. I keep speaking about the conversation. Everything starts with a conversation.
Yes.
It is just as how a conversation starts in our mind, and then it is reflective in our actions. It's the same process. Everything else takes. So have the conversation. Start it in your head. Let it be, you're going to verbalize it in words, and then we're going to take action. So let us do it in 1-3 step.
Right.
Think,
Right.
speak, but then act. The most critical part is the one in the end.
Yeah,
Let's
to act.
Move. Let's make a difference. Let us do this. Disaster management is everyone's business. It is, we say it's tourism.
No, it's disaster management.
Disaster
definitely.
management affects every sector.
Yeah.
In one's country. Let us take St. Vincent, for example, with La Soufrière. It was one volcano,
Yeah.
One volcano, but schools closed, businesses affected.
Yeah.
Everything has happened. The schools are closed because they were shelters. The people who were displaced in the red zones, red and orange zones, had to go into the schools to when the schools are closed, it means therefore that our working parents, where do you put them? What's going on with your children now that schools are not open? Let us think about it. Any day we say that we don't have school, you know how hard it is for a mother that has to figure out, okay, where is my child? Or you have to break whatever it is that you're doing, whatever your plan is at work, to ensure that they are now safer. Where are you going to bring them home? Where do you bring them home to? There is a reason why school and work happens at the same time.
Yeah.
It is hard to work with your children around because you have to then, okay, even though you give them a plan, at some point you have to take in a break. Their break may not be your break. So then it breaks your concentration with what you're doing. That is the reason why we have to appreciate all professions. Because, not Ivan, but COVID was one of the things that taught us that lesson. It made it very, very realistic as to how important all these different sectors working together, what it means, and the product that it brings forward. Being at home, being a chef, being a teacher, being a housewife, a cleaner, still being a journalist, trying to do everything at the same time during COVID, you've worked harder than you would work on a normal basis.
Yes.
And that's what I'm saying. The pandemic, while yes, we speak about the change that it has brought, I think we should more focus on the lessons that it has taught us, or rather remind us of the importance of everyone playing their part in this very long chain that we speak to, and us being able to grow as a country, as a person.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when we get to a particular place in our growth, be it in our plans as individuals, we forget from whence we came. But it was a sharp, realistic wake-up call as to what it is and the importance of everyone playing their part in this big pie that we say that we have our piece and everybody else has would have theirs. Because if we don't do it, we always speak about those weak links in the chain. COVID shut down the chain. The chain was on the ground, and then we recognized the importance that everybody play in this. The fisherman cannot go to fish. You're somebody who don't eat chicken, and you have to figure out, my God, what am I going to eat? I don't like the processed sardines in the can, but that might just be my option. Or I would have to go without meat for a while. With that said, our farmers having to go to tend to their animals, and so our teachers having to use a virtual platform. Virtual does not exist on its own. As parents, you have to be a part of the process. You have to sit there. You have to explain. You have to work along with them. But you still have all your chores that are assigned to you still there. So it is interesting. And I'm using all this example to show the link that everyone plays, the importance of everyone contributing in this disaster management process to ensure that we achieve our intended goal of protecting life, livelihoods, and property.
Absolutely. And sometimes we believe that, look, it's a hurricane season, my house is secure, I have a concrete roof, I live in an area safe, so I don't have to worry about anything. But then we fail to realize that the effects of a natural disaster is not just what it does to your environment, but it's also what it does to the psyche of some people. It's also what it does to the finances of some people. So it has very it's a very wide base in terms of the things that can happen as a result of a natural disaster. So we should never look at these things isolated and say, okay, well, I am secure, because we are never secure on our own.
No, there are no islands in this process.
Exactly. We all depend on each other in order to survive going through this. But it is definitely a fact that we spend a lot of time talking about hurricane season because there is a season, but more conversation needs to happen surrounding the other natural disasters that can befall us at any given time.
Yes,
those that are the most dangerous, because there's really no timing. You can't tell.
There's no way to pick up anything. We cannot tell you pack. We cannot tell. All we can tell you at some stage, run.
Is run.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or in the case of earthquakes, safest, drop, cover, and hold. And these are the little principles that we need to know as we continue to preach to that, or rather speak to the importance of comprehensive disaster management. The multi-hazardous environment in which we live in now reminds us of it, and the challenges that it poses.
Yes.
Because you are not preparing for any one thing at any one time. You are preparing for everything at any time. At any time.
All right. So is there any more information that NADMA wants to leave with us this morning before?
So what we have been doing is sharing. I know I have been sharing with you. Every week we send out those tips. We have them now categorized under the different subheadings. Your food checklist, your water checklist, your hurricane kits. And I know when I send them to you, you share them. You would share them via social media platforms and through this medium. We are encouraging all to do that. When we share them, go onto our Facebook page, like the Facebook page, NADMA Grenada, the page. There we also issue wherever we do releases, and so we would share their short notices, something happening quickly. We might tell you that this is coming. We will update you further later. But, go onto the page, like the page, know what's happening in Grenada. It's important that we do. And I continue to stress this, and I want this to be one of our messages this year, to that of misinformation. Let us be responsible. Let us not share the things that we know that are not authentic. Let us avoid setting off those panic buttons. They are not helping the process. All we are doing is just throwing people off and playing with people's psyche. And when we were looking for them to respond, they would not, because they tend to think that everything is a hoax.
Is a hoax,
And it is important that we don't do this. The wisdom behind that old adage that we heard from our parents, don't call wolf when wolf not coming. There's just so much behind it. Let us please avoid doing this time around. Let's be responsible. Share what we know are the authentic information. We will share the information via our platforms. You want to be a part of our WhatsApp broadcast group, you can send us a message. Call at the office 440-8390. Leave your number I will add you to the group. We will share the information with you as it comes to hand. Normally, I send out the messages at short notice, very, very quickly, something happening. I will update you further later, but at least you know what's happening. Information empowers. It is not given to create panic, but rather to initiate and guide people's actions.
And also, what would you say, because we have been thrown into a false sense of security in a lot of ways, not just for COVID-19, but also in terms of natural disasters. You often hear of a tropical depression or a storm or a hurricane that always just seems to pass us by. And we always seem to think, okay, well, God is a Grenadian. We ain't got nothing, man. We safe, Or we may hear of a tropical depression that passes, or a storm that is expected to pass over us. And when it gets to us, it dissipates. We ain't get nothing but a little cloudiness and so on. And we feel like, nothing is happening. What message would you like to give to the people out there who are thrown into this false sense of security?
We want you to guard against that level of complacency. There is no comfort in that one.
Yeah.
There is no comfort because, yes, and that's why I keep saying that we are grateful for the past 16 years that we were not touched. Emily was the last one. 17 years that we've had. Yes, let us tap ourselves on the back on this one, but let us continue to keep our fingers crossed that it remains that way. As it relates to whether or not it will remain that way, that one is completely out of our hands. Because I think the same way we compare it to that of death, if some of us have a choice, then we would not go. We would stick around until we kind of tired.
Yes.
And that would be, for some, it would be never.
Yes.
But that power we don't have. He has given us the power of choice. So choice in this case is doing the right thing and preparing, not being complacent and saying that he's a Grenadian, he's every nationality. He has created this entire world and he represents us well.
Yes.
He keeps our best interest at heart. But we would not be rewarded by being complacent in this season or for any other hazard.
Yes.
So it is our personal responsibility to ensure that we are safe. That is what it is. So let us get this notion out of our minds. He is every nationality.
He's every nationality.
He is every nationality. He created it and he will take care of all of us. But the power that he gave us is that of choice as to what we do, how we do it, when we do it. Our safety would only rest in us being prepared.
All right. And lastly, before you leave, I just want us to just go through the process again. In the event of a natural disaster, what usually happens first? Because oftentimes we hear of things happening. We get a little too much rain for our liking. We ask, where is NADMA? Walk us through the process and the steps that would happen in the event that we have to hear of a possible hurricane or storm or even, some inclement weather.
All right. So all weather-related issues, our technical experts on that is the Met Office. Yes. There's something severe coming. So we have last weekend we were affected by a tropical wave. We did not say anything. We did not need to say anything. The Met Office issued the alert saying that we were being affected or we were expected to be affected by a tropical wave on the weekend and some increased showers were expected. We are into the hurricane season. So we expect rain around this time. NADMA's voice gets involved in this process when we recognize that the rains that the Met Office is forecasting now has a potential of bringing or there being a threat, the threat of flooding or other hazards, that we know that we are prone to because of the rain, or it might be wind, that we alert you and we tell you to be extra cautious.
Right.
And when we do that, we normally share some tips as to some of the things that you should look for. So be cautious while driving. Drivers, motorists, let us remember that we have pedestrians on the road so that we don't wet them along the way. That kind of thing. Right. The slides, when the rain coming, slippages are also another concern. So we tell you to look out for them. That kind of thing. Our farmers and so. It helps them. Our fishermen who are on the sea, If it is wind, it becomes a concern. The wind and the rain is a concern to them. So you see, when we issue, and then the Met Office would normally issue a marine advisory. So when we add our voice to it, it is because the threat now is now become the chances of it happening it has increased, so it's more likely. So we add our voice because now we have gone now into the start of the disaster management process.
Right.
But the Met Office is a part of NADMA structure. So with the issuing, it means that they have shared the technical information that you need that should prompt action. So if we say that we are going to be affected, the possibility exists that we will be affected by a tropical wave. We know that we're living in a low-lying area, so flooding is a possibility. What should I do? Do I have my sandbags on hand? Do I need to bring them out? Ask yourself the question. And now the Met Office is doing impact forecasting. So to make it a lot easier for us to be able to interpret what they're saying, yes? Mm-hmm. So they would say, okay, we were expecting how much inches of rain. With that, we expect that the St. John's River may come down. Tantine may flood, Montrouge may flood, or the areas that we know are prone to flooding, they may identify them as the areas that we may see underwater. So if you're in that area, be cautious. When Met speaks, Met is NADMA. Yes? Right. So listen. Yeah, NADMA we may not add our voice to it because we have not gone into that stage where it has become severe. Right. But the Met Office would normally advise as to what to expect, and the constant messages that we're doing like now, and we would share with the PSS, and so that we will be recording, is to remind you of the things that you should do to prevent flooding. So your sandbags come into effect. The little things that you can do, you know, you have perishable stuffs on the ground, then you try to put them, you try to elevate them so that water damage can be minimized. Yes, these things. And once that happens, we will add our voice. We basically saying what Met is saying and reminding you of what you should do. Right. How to be cautious. With that done, NADMA will be the one, right? We will share the information. But as we see, Met voice is NADMA. So don't think that we must say it for you to move. Right. The Met Office says it, please adhere, listen. It is weather, it is dynamic, it can change, and when it does, they will update you in the next forecast when they update the forecast. So let us do so, and that is what we ask. So once that happens, unless it's a case where it's a pending storm, that kind of thing where the system is then upgrading, then you will start hearing about the emergency management meetings. Yes, NEAC comes into play. Whenever you hear NEAC starts rolling in and that an emergency meeting has been convened, then it means therefore that we are advised. So we start taking the measures now to ensure that if we now move from this stage to another stage, that we are ready. So then we can speak to the activation, and there are procedures that we would follow and decisions that will be made at these meetings when a system moves from a watch, so a depression to a storm. So it's like a depression, wave, storm, then we get to hurricane. We know that whenever we start getting to that place and it start moving closer, we always speak about that area of concern that the Met Office looks at. Once it is within that point, then we start issuing watches, warnings, and then we start sharing different information, the time that school closes, when we advise businesses to get their workers out and home, when shelters will be activated, how much shelters will be activated, where shelters will be activated, who will be at the shelters, who we advise to go to the shelters, what we are expecting read the system, what are the other. And the same thing applies to Grenlec. When we do that, Grenlec activates their plan. Our telecommunications entity activate theirs. Our businesses activate their plan, and it is guided by what we do. And that is the reason why everything happens in steps. So you can. It's almost as if now I am just singing. It's like a chorus. I am doing it over because it is what happens. Right. Yes. So once that happens, then it means therefore that it's time for us to start taking some action. The national mechanism is now activated. So it means then that your personal and family plans need to start moving. And that is the reason why we ask you to ensure that you have them before, so that when we do activate, you now activate your personal plans and everything now works in tandem. That way, we will be able to better respond to these hazards when they happen.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak with us again, Oslin. Of course, you are always welcome, and I know I'm going to see you a few more times.
Yes, you will.
Because we are in that season, and we are in that mode where we need to keep educating and re-educating people on what we should do during this period. So we thank you so much for being here with us, guys. We're going to take a short break, and then we will be back with some more conversation for you. Stay tuned.
19 spreads from person to person through the droplets that are produced. COVID-19 spreads from person to person through the droplets that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes, which makes it easy to spread between people in close contact. Now let's get prepared to stay healthy.
To reduce your chance of catching or spreading COVID-19, practice these simple everyday preventative measures. Droplets can also land on surfaces, so ensure that you wash your hands frequently for a minimum of 20 seconds or sing the happy birthday song twice. Avoid touching your face, especially your eyes, nose, and mouth. If soap and water are not readily available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with an alcohol content between 60 and 90%. 70% is ideal.
When you cough or sneeze, cover your nose and mouth with a flexed elbow or a tissue. Dispose of the tissue immediately and then wash your hands. If you notice someone has a fever and cough or other symptoms of respiratory illness, avoid close contact when possible. Let's all do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. Our health is our collective responsibility.
Hey, are you gonna wear your mask today? You see everywhere you go, there are rules you got to follow, so don't you say COVID-19 will delay. Take the opportunity to save your community. Don't be that guy, put a mask on your face if you're heading outside. It's your life, my life, more lives we'll be taken if we don't try. If you feel any symptoms, call the hotline. Stay inside until you feel fine. 6 feet away every day. Keep COVID-19 far from away. Keep Grenada safe. Be COVID-19 smart.
They are currently housing a press conference as it relates to the official launching of the National Population and Housing Census. And we're going to go over there at this time to join with them for that census. Guys, it's always a pleasure being here with you. And as we say here every day at Hard Talk, in whatever you say and whatever you do, be safe and be secure. We always love being here with you, but we don't ever want to be talking about you. So be safe and be responsible. It's been a pleasure, guys.
Thank you very much, Corey. A beautiful voice indeed. In Grenada and most countries worldwide, a census is conducted every 10 years around the same time. Internationally, this round of census is referred to as the 2020 round of population and housing censuses. Some countries have already undertaken their censuses in 2020. The last population and housing census in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique was conducted in 2011. Hence, a census becomes due for Grenada in 2021. This year's census date is September 15th, 2021. This is why today's launch is significant in signaling the start of this very important undertaking. Now I invite the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development, Physical Development and Energy, Mr. Mike Sylvester, to deliver the welcome remarks.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to recognize, of course, Honorable Gregory Boying, Minister for Finance, Mr. Halim Brizan, the Director of the Census Statistical Office, also Mr. Timon Charles, who's also with the CSO, and other members of the CSO who are here with us. I want to also recognize Mr. Kerry Pear, who is the Chairman of the Census Advisory Committee, and other members of the committee who are listening to us online, who are connecting with us virtually. I would also like to recognize permanent secretaries, other members of Ministry of Finance, and all those who are not here with us physically, but of course, as I said, are joining us through virtual means. We want to welcome them, ladies and gentlemen. It is my distinct pleasure this morning to welcome you to the official launch of the Population and Housing Census 2021. Now, this census, or this undertaking, as you all know, is a very important one, is a major one. And for this reason, the participation of all our citizens is very, very important. It's critical. It depends on the full participation of all of us. We do hope that this launch will provide the kind of awareness, the kind of exposure that will help bring all of us on board, in particular because, as you know, this exercise would involve every single one of our citizens. It would, of course, require that everyone be counted. It will require the collection of data regarding the housing statistics of every single household and house in Grenada. And so, as I said, it's a major, major undertaking. The importance of the data that is collected, it's data regarding demographics, data regarding economic information, data regarding social statistics, and so on, which of course is important in helping policymakers, helping private sector individuals, and helping all individuals in general to be able to make data-driven decisions. Is also important in helping in planning, whether it's for social purposes, whether it's for economic purposes, and so on, as well as helping us to be able to provide the support, especially to vulnerable populations and so on, who you would find coming out of the data. As the chair would have said, the last census was done in 2011, so it's a decennial process. And so, you know, over that period, a lot can happen in terms of demographic, economic, and social changes in the economy. And so it's important that we do that. And as I said before, there is no other undertaking as extensive and detailed as this particular one, hence the importance of it at this particular time. So we hope that this launch, as I said, will provide the kind of exposure, will help to bring persons on board. In terms of the institutional arrangements for the conduct of the census, the Census Statistical Office is mandated to do that. And of course, that process is supported by a Census Advisory Committee, which is really a multi-stakeholder grouping. So it comprises government, churches, private sector, NGOs, and all those bodies to support the process, because you want them to not only play a role in advising in terms of how we go forward, but also being leaders of communities and leaders of captains of industries and so on. They will be able to help bring persons on board and help, of course, that we have a very serious undertaking, and an undertaking that, of course, capture the right kind of information, because you don't want a census that you have wrong information. You know, as they say, if you have garbage, if garbage goes in, then garbage comes out. So you want to be able to get good data, good information, and the involvement of everyone, in particular the leaders who I've just mentioned, is important in that particular regard. So my task this morning is very simple: is to welcome each and every one of you, including the members of the media who are here. You have a very important role to play as well. The media is also represented on the advisory committee, and we want to get the message out to all and sundry that be part of this process. You'll hear more about it in terms of the how the process will unfold. The minister, of course, will speak to many of these issues, and a presentation you will hear from Mr. Brizan as well. So I'll end on this note and to thank you and encourage you to be part of this process as we look forward to conducting the 2021 Population and Housing Census. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, P.S. Sylvester. And as P.S. Sylvester would have stated, if garbage goes in, then garbage comes out. And that's not what we want when we conduct the census this year. So it's really important that each and every citizen understand what their role is in this entire process. So we're asking that when you see enumerators coming to your doorsteps, to your workplaces, and so come September, we are asking that you give them the right and proper information so that we have the kind of statistics we need for the type of developmental changes that would come thereafter. Conducting a national population and housing census is one of the single most important and necessary undertakings for any country and its government. The data gathered aids in developmental planning for all sectors. The Grenada government recognizes this fact and has thrown its full support behind this venture. But you'll hear more of this as the next speaker comes to the podium. I invite Minister for Finance, Economic Development, Physical Development and Energy, the Honorable Gregory Bowen, to deliver today's feature address. Mr. Bowen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, Permanent Secretary with the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Adam Brizan, and other members from the Central Statistical Office, other members from the Ministry of Finance, Prophetess Wendy, who has left, ladies and gentlemen, joining us, listening and viewing on the media, and members of the press here present, including our own GIS, I bid you a very pleasant morning. Today marks the official launch of the 2021 Population and Housing Census under the motto, Count Us, and the slogan, Nothing about us without us, because we all count. As we begin this census phase, we want to proceed with a sense of unity, national pride, and commitment to our beautiful country. As Grenadians, it is our civic duty to partake in this important component of national stocktaking. Not only do we have an obligation to partake in the census, but also an obligation to encourage others to do so, as the information provided will redound to the benefit of all. The population and housing census is a key source of high-quality statistical data, which is essential to the development of countries, of regions, and of the world economies. Official statistics is a public good. Hence, it is not only used by the central government, but also by decision makers in the public and private sectors, by researchers, students, non-governmental organizations, national, regional, and international development organizations, the media, and other users of data, which includes all residents and the citizens of Grenada. The population and housing census is highly essential in this period of COVID-19, recognizing that the pandemic has significantly changed the world and severely impacted our Grenadian economy. The launching of the census shows our commitment as a government to finding solutions through the implementation of effective policies that will cause our economy to bounce back, to become stronger and more resilient. For this to be achieved, these policies must be informed by credible data, which is an important output of the census. In keeping with the slogan, nothing about us without us, because we all count, and in the spirit of the Sustainable Development Goals, leaving no one behind, and putting an end to poverty through sustainable development, we encourage the populace to play an active role in this important exercise. Statistics is often referred to as the voice of the people. And for this census, it is important for the voices of everyone to be heard, so that we can better satisfy your needs and plan your future. I must underscore here, the population and housing census is the most important and accurate source of data about the people and on the housing stock of any country, as it is based on factual data collected on each individual in the population. It is the only source of data that covers essential characteristics about the entire resident population and reports this information at community level, which is the smallest geographic subdivision. This information is in high demand, frequently used by many, and is only captured during a census. It also provides a robust source of statistics for the work of the national statistical systems, being used as benchmarks for household survey programs. When this population data is coupled with a geographic information system, it provides a rich source of geospatial information for planning and monitoring, as well as solving developmental challenges and addressing crises brought on by natural disasters. This is crucial for building a resilient nation. The rich and fresh data set to be produced from the 2021 census will update the analysis we have already done from the 2021 results. When complemented with other data sources and geographic information system, the census becomes a powerful analytical tool which can transform our lives. And information from the census will be used for many years to come in trend analysis and comparison across census years. COVID-19 has given us a clear awakening on how statistics have been used in strategically managing and mitigating the impact of the pandemic the world over. In restoring our economies, we cannot separate combating the COVID-19 crisis from the production of sound statistics. Hence, a census of the population is inevitable at this time. It is coming at a very critical point, as it will allow us to understand the impact of the coronavirus on the population at all levels, as well as how our lives have changed socially and economically. Sound statistics produced from a census will be important in solving the post-COVID equation, as high-quality statistical data will be required to identify the numerous economic, social, and environmental problems emanating from the pandemic, which further slow our progress in achieving the goals and targets of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and our own National Sustainable Development Plan. For us to save lives and restore livelihoods, our policies must be informed by credible data. In this context, the Ministry of Health will be increasing its data gathering in the coming weeks. Accurate data, saving lives. Do give them the cooperation. The population and housing census plays an essential role in public administration, and it is critical in ensuring equity in distribution of government and private funds and resources among various communities, parishes, and the population groupings such as children, youth, elderly, women, men, the disabled, sick, poor, and unemployed. Hence, census information will bring to the forefront the needs of different vulnerable groups and the communities and the inequalities people are experiencing, ensuring the optimal allocation of government's scarce resources. While community statistics are useful in their own right, they are also important for government because they can be used to produce information for planning the location of a school, health facility, community center, road, bridge, emergency shelter, and other public facilities, as well as for the private sector in determining the best location for retail outlets, manufacturing establishments, entertainment facilities, among others, including the type of micro and small businesses that the community will support. The Small Business Development Fund and entrepreneurs will be well served by this census. In the context where we're asking people to finance themselves as an entrepreneur, where they approach the Small Business Development Fund with a project that neither the evaluators nor the entrepreneurs understand whether or not such a project will flourish. The census will help us in this context. So a project that will not flourish in the community will not be passed, but the proposer will be advised accordingly. And so we will combine the Small Business Development Fund with the accurate, high-quality data gathered in the census to drive small business development and to reduce unemployment. 500 small businesses employing 2 persons will reduce the unemployment quantum by 1,000 persons. Significant. This is what our census will help us to achieve. The Central Statistical Office, the government office with a legal mandate to undertake a census, has been building its capacity over the years, taking advantage of the computer-assisted personal interviewing technology in the administration of surveys. Having implemented numerous paperless household surveys since 2016, the Central Statistical Office is in a particularly good position to undertake its first paperless census using tablets, data capture software, and geographic information system software. The use of these applications will significantly improve the quality and timeliness of the data collected and produced, and will contribute to the effective management of this census. It also ensures a higher level of data security and confidentiality in keeping with the provisions of the Statistics Act and the soon-to-be made census regulations. The Central Statistical Office has a legal obligation to ensure that the confidentiality and security of information collected, hence information that it discloses individual identities, cannot be disseminated. In addition, plans are underway to significantly improve the overall functioning of the country's statistical operations and reporting mechanism. A US $8 million World Bank funded project will see the human and technological capacities of the public and private sectors enhanced to provide final data for information and decision making within a short window after the end of the reporting period. At the end of every month, we must closely approximate the developing countries. By the 5th, we should be telling you the unemployment ratio, the change in economic growth, the financial situation, not only in the public sector, but in the financial sector, which is critical for decision making for both the government and for the private sector. Now we have to wait, and Mr. Brizan has to beg to get the data from private sectors. The technological advancement will allow us to place the correct equipment and applications at the various private sectors, locations, and within the government. And there will be automatic reporting, so that by the end of the month, Mr. Brizan and his team will analyze, and you'll see us putting on the government website the bit of information. Where now today? By the end of May, we are reporting on February and March. We agree it's totally acceptable. It is in this context that I want to compliment Mr. Brizan and his team, because I know they are doing their best and working miracles with what they have. So after this project, I know that they will breathe a heavy sigh of relief. And the country will be making decisions based on accurate information, fundamental in any business that anyone will run. We are also highly conscious of the times you are living in and will not want to put the population at risk. Hence, the Central Statistical Office and the Ministry of Health, who is also a member of this Census Advisory Committee, are collaborating in ensuring the necessary health and safety protocols are in place to protect the public and our staff as they administer the census. Please give them your fullest cooperation as they approach your homes and your businesses. Our priority is to ensure that everyone can be safely counted. As we launch, and from this point onwards, we want the census motto to resonate in the minds and hearts of all Grenadians and people living in Grenada. Count us. Because it is all about us, our homes, our people, our lives, our livelihood, our country, our hope, our future. It's all in our hands. It's all about us, our infant, our children, our youth, our elderly, our physically challenged, our poor, and our vulnerable. No one shall be left behind. It is all about us, our women, our men, our boys, and our girls. Be the change you want to see. It is all about us, our education, our health, our housing, our infrastructure, our security, our welfare, our environment. Let's make a difference. Now more than ever, let us work together to ensure all Grenadians are counted in Census 2021, because we all count. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister Bowen. As Minister Bowen mentioned in his address, the slogan for this year's census is "Nothing about us without us, because we all count." This is an important message to all our citizens, for it tells us that this exercise concerns each and every one of us. It is our business, and we're not leaving anyone behind. I would like us to take a short break in this program to invite you to take a moment to enjoy the talented Shireen Brazan as she sings Connect the Figures. This song was composed by Ms. Brazan on the occasion of Caribbean Statistic Day and World Statistics Day, celebrated on the 15th and 20th October 2020, respectively. The celebrations were held under the theme, Connecting the World with Data We Can Trust. Ms. Brazan.
Connecting the world with data we can trust, leaving no one behind. Putting an end to poverty and strife, and we're saving lives. Achieving sustainable development. This is no experiment, concrete evidence. Everything is relevant. It's time for positive change. Saving lives in our country, in the region, in the world. Connect the dots, let's make it work to make informed decisions. Yes, you'll change, we'll change. It'll change if we work together. You'll change, we'll change. It'll change, connect the figures. You'll change, we'll change. It'll change if we work together. You'll change, we'll change. It'll change, connect the figures. You'll change, we'll change. It'll change if we work together. You'll change, we'll change. It'll change, connect the figures. If we can work together, we can be so much better. And if we can take the time to read between the lines, we'll help someone to inform, to create policies that don't separate, that include and are suitable to people's needs. Let's not assume. You'll change, we'll change. It'll change if we work together. You'll change, we'll change. It'll change, connect the figures. You'll change, we'll change. And it'll change if we work together. You'll change, we'll change. It'll change, connect the figures. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Shireen. Such a beautiful song. And the lyrics is so fitting. Thank you so very much. Your words will stay with us, for we all have an important part to play in connecting the world with the data we can trust by participating in the population and housing census and other data collection activities of the Central Statistical Office. It is now my pleasure to invite to deliver a presentation on the 2021 census Mr. Halim Brazan, our Director of Statistics and Census Officer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as we continue with this National Population and Housing Census launch, we want to promote the general message of unity and equality, and making a general appeal for persons not only to ensure that you are counted, but that you also ensure that other persons are counted as well. Your families, your friends, your work colleagues. Under the motto, "Count Us," as Minister said, and the slogan, "Nothing about us without us, because we all count." So this is a breakdown of my presentation. I think it's important for you to hear a history of census taking in the region. And then I will answer the questions, the what, the when, the who, the why, and the how as it relates to the population and housing census. The history of census taking in the region dates back to the early 1840s, and it continued at regular intervals except during the period of the Great Depression and the World War. Post the World War, in the 1960 round, census taking recommenced in most countries in the Caribbean and exhibited significant regional collaboration with all participating member countries, utilizing a common approach. And this regional coordination was reinforced in the 1970 census round, where the coordination was done by the professor of demography of UWI, Mona, being the overall coordinator. In the 1980 census round and thereafter, we saw the establishment of the Regional Census Coordinating Committee, a committee which exists up till this day, comprising of directors of statistics and chief statisticians throughout the region. The CARICOM Secretariat was charged with the responsibility of executing the regional census strategy, including the convening of the Regional Census Coordinating Committee meetings. And the reporting arrangement of the RCCC was to the Standing Committee of Caribbean Statisticians, established by the Common Market Council of Ministers in 1974. And the SCCS, the Standing Committee of Caribbean Statisticians, endorses the decisions of the Regional Census Coordinating Committee. The general purpose of this Regional Census Coordinating Committee is to ensure uniformity throughout the region, guidance on steps to be taken in the execution of census in the various territories, the adoption of an appropriate method for processing data, and advice and assistance with the preparation for census publications and other technical assistance. What is a population and housing census? A population and housing census is a total process of planning, collecting, compiling, evaluating, analyzing, and disseminating data at the national level down to the smallest geographic level, normally the community level. And this information pertains to all persons and all households in a country, or in some countries might be a well-delimited part of a country, but in the case of Grenada, it's the whole country, the entire country, including Carriacou and Petit Martinique. And this information is collected at a specified time. What kind of data do we collect? Demographic and socioeconomic information on persons and individuals, as well as household information on the characteristics of facilities, access to amenities, and living conditions. The census is the largest and most important statistical undertaking of any national statistical office, and it is among the most complex and massive peacetime exercise a nation undertakes, as it requires careful planning, resourcing, implementation, and monitoring, the mapping of the entire country, mobilizing and training vast amount of enumerators, canvassing all buildings, collecting individual and household level information, compiling and processing this information, and also analyzing and disseminating the data at the end. The essential features of a census. A census has 4 essential features. The first, individual enumeration, where each individual and each set of living quarters is enumerated separately and the characteristics are separately recorded. Universality means that it should cover a precisely defined territory, and in our case is the entire country, Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And it includes every person present and or residing within its scope. Simultaneity, each person and each set of living quarters should be enumerated as of the same well-defined point in time, and that is the census date, 15th of September, which is a reference period for data collection. Defined periodicity, which means that census should be taken at regular intervals so that comparable information is available in a fixed sequence. And this takes me to my next slide, which speaks to the when. When is a population census conducted? As mentioned by Madam Chair, most countries in the world take censuses around the same time, year ending 0 or near to 0. And this ensures international comparability. In Grenada, a population and housing census is conducted every 10 years. And our last census was conducted approximately 10 years ago. And some information here, already mentioned that the census date is the 15th of September, and the census period, bearing in mind that this is our first experience having to do a census in the midst of a pandemic period, we want to give ourselves enough time for data for the fieldwork. So we would really hope to complete by the end of December, but it all depends on the full cooperation of all residents and all respondents. Who does the population and housing census target? Usual residents. For census purposes, it is the place at which the person lives at the time of the census and has been there for some time and intends to stay there for some time, normally a period of 6 months. Also, in terms of the residents, the usual residents included are population living in private non-institutional dwellings, and these are the population in households. The population living in institutions, for example, homes, hospitals, prisons, and other correctional facilities, as well as the homeless population. So we are leaving no one behind. Why is it necessary to conduct a census? For many reasons, some of which were mentioned already. Policy formulation and decision making for achieving inclusive and sustainable economic and social development. Also, developing and implementing disaster and natural disasters mitigating programs. Analyzing population characteristics and changes over time. And this is particularly critical given the impact of COVID-19 and also in terms of projecting the population. Meeting the needs of special population groups such as the aging population, children, adolescent, the youth, and persons with a disability. Mainstreaming gender in development. Analyzing the status of economic activity as it relates to unemployment, youth unemployment, and to develop and implement programs to treat with these appropriate challenges. Understanding of the adequacy and quality of housing, informing policies on education and training, assessing the status of migration, both internal and international migration. And the census is the main tool that we use to assess migration. Also undertaking situational analysis on health and wellness to improve the health of the population, as well as assessing the needs of the population relative to food security, poverty, and hunger, analyzing the situation on fertility and mortality as they can contribute to changes in the population, and it is also critical in determining determining population growth and doing population projections as well. Crime and security analysis, also small area issues at the level of communities within countries, and also doing geospatial analysis. Also assessing access to the internet, computer, and ICT in this time is very, very crucial to ensure that most persons have this access. And finally, environmental issues. The census is also critical, plays an essential role in all elements of the national statistical system, as it is an important benchmark for statistical compilation. And the census basically charts the way for us at the Central Statistical Office and within the National Statistical System for the next 10 years, as it is used as a sample frame for sample surveys, both household and establishment, and also censuses. In fact, from the population and housing census, a frame for the agricultural census is normally developed as well. And you can develop frames for economic census, and you can get information that will inform the business register, which is important for the conduct of business surveys. Population figure is also a denominator in many statistical indicators, including GDP per capita, life expectancy, fertility rates, death rates, birth rates, net and gross enrollment, crime prevalence rate, and population density. Minister made mention of the fact that statistics is a public good, and it is a public good because it's available for use by everyone. And in this next slide, you can fit yourself in one, two, or more of these categories, because each and every one of us are users of the information that statistics produce, official statistics, and the statistics that will be produced from the census. How will the census be conducted? So the census will be conducted in 3 major stages with phases in each stage. The first is the preparatory stage, which is actually the stage that we are in, and the office is currently putting all its efforts in ensuring that things are put in place to be ready for September 15th. And it includes planning, preparation, mapping, questionnaire design, and manual development. That is the census manual, which aids the understanding of the questionnaire, and also the pre-testing and piloting of the census questionnaire. The census questionnaire is the key instrument that is used for the undertake of the census. The census stage is the stage at which we will be setting up our field operations, for example, the recruitment, training and selection, and also one of the most important aspect, the census enumeration. And the post-census stage is where we would see the data processing, analysis, dissemination, and the many products and documentation coming out from the census. It is important for us to understand the legislation governing the census in Grenada, and I make reference to the statistical legislation which governs the operation of the Central Statistical Office. It is Act number 30 of 1960, and it's an act to provide for the taking of census and for the collection, compilation, analysis, and publication of certain statistical information and for other matters, other related matters. The Minister for Finance has the power to direct that a census be taken by way of a census order. And once the minister directs that the census be taken, then the census regulations from the last census 2011 will be repealed and revised to that of 2021. The other legal provisions for the census taken, confidentiality, and confidentiality is the hallmark of our profession as statisticians. All census staff and staff within the statistics office signs an oath of secrecy, prohibiting them from divulging information. The major offenses include the breach of confidentiality and also the falsification of information. Sanctions for these offenses include imprisonment for 2 years and a fine of $5,000. So this is our obligation, this is our legal obligation to the public, that we protect the confidentiality of the information and also that we report the information accurately. Now, you as the general public has a duty to give information under the census regulation. And this is quoted from the census regulation, the last census regulation, which will be renewed. Every person with respect to whom census information is required by the census order must give to an enumerator such information with respect to himself, herself, or other persons as is necessary for the purpose of the taking of the census. And a person who fails to give information required by the order actually commits an offense. Moving on to the census questionnaire. And in the census questionnaire, the essential criteria for developing the questionnaire was that it must be comparable over time and across countries. As we know, the involvement of CARICOM in this, there is the questionnaire is harmonized at the regional level, and there's a CARICOM core set of questions to ensure regional comparability. It is also based on internationally accepted definitions and methodology used by all, and our guiding manual for the taking of census is the UN Principles and Recommendations for Population and Housing Censuses. Now this would give you an idea of some of the information, the various sections of the census questionnaire. And we have personal characteristics, which would give you things like age, sex, ethnicity, religious affiliation, also training and education. We have training and education as a section, health, income, fertility, internet access, disability, place of residence, and employment, work. And this is the individual section, and then the household section, we would present things on the building, collect information on the building characteristics, housing facilities, appliances, crime, environment, land tenancy, etc. Now, the data collection, the data capture tool, we'll be using, taking advantage of the new technology. As Minister said, it's the first paperless census, and the census questionnaire is electronic and will be administered using tablets with the survey solution software, which is a software created by the World Bank, and also we'll be combining this with the Esri ArcGIS software, which would enhance the mapping and the census management. The advantage of the paperless census include improved timeliness and quality of data, and ensures completeness of the questionnaire, and significantly reduces the data processing time, and also improve the survey management and improve the overall data security. We intend to implement a multimodal approach to the undertake of this census using CAPI, which is computer-assisted personal interviewing technology, as the main mode, which is face-to-face. Of course, we'll be ensuring that all the COVID protocols are adhered to, as the Minister indicated that we are in communication with the Ministry of Health in this regard. And the second mode is CATI, the computer-assisted telephone interviewing for persons who may feel more comfortable doing the questionnaire via the telephone, right? So we have that option in light of the fact that we may not meet the persons at home, because we're supposed to go into the home at reasonable time, and also the fact of the COVID pandemic. Recruitment, selection, and training. There is an online application to be completed, and we wish for persons interested in working on the census to complete this application by the 9th of July. And you can apply for census enumerator or supervisor